Test, test. I like your picture.
You like
Just
that?
just me and you.
All right, good.
Who's Betsy Esser?
I don't know. Is that a stalker? Stalker friend of yours?
I'm trying to fit. Who do we have in this group that there'd be a Betsy Esser in the waiting rooms? Are we being punked or something?
We're being what's the Zoom? We're being hacked, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to see. We got Annette. Oh, maybe it's Melissa. Is Betsy a nickname for Melissa? No.
Not in my world.
Am I supposed to let her in?
Maybe she's a friend of somebody.
What the hell? You're so different with your beard.
Me? Look at you. You don't have any gray. How do you not have any gray in that?
Oh, there's some. There's some right there.
Oh yeah. If you have to get that close and use your finger to point out that, I'm not counting that.
All right, I'm going to admit
you're older than me, but I'm showing more experience and maturity. That's all I have.
I have no maturity. All right, let's see. This waiting room thing is, oh, Betsy, where's? Oh, okay, there's Betsy.
Oh, it's Zach.
I made you wait in the waiting room because I was like, wait a second, who's Betsy?
We thought we were getting hacked.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know. I guess I'm on her computer.
That's funny. Ryan, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. Ross, you're not walking. Can't use that excuse this time. Let's see who else. There's Chad. How you doing, Chad?
I think some people might be on mute.
Oh yeah.
Hey guys.
See if I can. I'm trying to turn on Ross's camera with my secret powers, but it's not working. Oh, there he is. Cheers, Ross. You're muted. You're muted.
There we go. You got me?
Yep, you're good.
Cheers, man.
I got I'm off the bourbon. I got a new drink.
What do you got?
It's Tennessee whiskey. It's called Uncle Nearest. It's the guy that the first master brewer for Jack Daniels was a recently freed slave, and he was the master brewer for Jack Daniels. And it's a really neat story. Their families grew up together. There's still people from this guy's family, Uncle Nearest, and the Daniels family are still working at the brewery.
Wow.
And so this lady just heard about the story somehow and did all this research and then started her own brewery with his original recipe. So since I'm in quarantine, I decided to have him send me a bottle. And so I'm testing out. It tastes a little bit like Jack Daniels, but it's less painful.
So you wouldn't
I'm sure
call
they
it
were
good.
happy to send you a bottle, right?
What's that?
I'm sure they were happy to send you a bottle.
They were. I had to pay them, but they did send it.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
All right, so we got, let me see who we missed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we got 10 of us. I'm expecting a few more, so let's give it a few more minutes.
Jim, do you want to explain why you still have a beard? We were told you wouldn't the next time we saw you.
Oh, no, next time you see me in person.
Oh, in person. Okay.
Yeah, this is my apocalypse beard. It's
Gotcha.
staying until the apocalypse is over.
Gotcha.
You might be Rip Van Winkle before it's over with.
I know, that's what it feels like. Oh, I'm so ready for it to be done.
It depends on your definition of over too. Is that vaccine? Is that, restaurants being open? What's that look like?
It's me having to put on something other than sweatpants and go out into the world, other than to go grocery shopping, I think is how I'm going to define it.
That's fair.
But I made the mistake of telling my stepdaughters they could dye my beard the day before I shaved it off, so I think they're going to make it pink. So I'll send you guys a picture.
Classic.
Are you one of the guys that has daytime sweats and then nighttime sweats? Do you at least change your uniform or no?
No, but I do have a favorite pair of sweats, and since I figured we're going to be hunkered down for a while, I actually bought a second pair.
Nice. Same color and everything?
No, different color, but same exact pair.
All right.
Yeah.
At least you're mixing it up.
Yeah,
At least you're mixing it up.
Exactly.
Awesome.
All right. I'm going to wait a couple more minutes. See who else we got here. Net's not going to be here.
Hey, good evening. You got Brian on.
Hey, Brian, how are you?
Good.
All right. I think we're almost, there's Mark. We're almost, I got to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 12 people. I think we're just missing a couple. So is everybody on this, was on the last one, correct?
I was not.
Oh, no. Joe and Mike, right? And
I was not correct.
who was that? Okay.
That was Joe. Yeah, Joe.
All right. Well, while we're waiting, we'll start with Mike. If you could, I know you introduced yourself on email, but if whoever wasn't here last time, and apologies, I don't remember, but starting with Mike, if you could just, in a minute, kind of tell your story, what you do, where you're going, and what kind of passive investments you're looking into, and if you've done anything yet.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So Jim and I met each other last year, 2 years ago, I guess it would have been, with Coin, and appreciate the opportunity to join you guys. Actually, I know Mark. Mark and I are in the same industry here. We're in medical device. So full-time medical device rep. I actually work with a team of 10 guys here in the state of Ohio. And, real estate, I've kind of done a few different avenues in real estate over the past 5 years. I bought some investment properties and took a little hiatus from medical device to be full-time investment real estate broker, and actually had an opportunity to go back to my old company over the past year to lead the team I previously was on. So I took that opportunity and now looking to get more into the investing passive side of the business. And I was kind of excited to see this opportunity come up with you guys and learn from all you. So
Cool.
yeah, a little bit about me.
All right, thanks. And I kind of surprised Mike with this, but he just had a call with Nighthawk, which is a passive group. What's the guy, the main guy, the podcast guy?
Yeah, Michael Blanc.
Yeah, so Michael Blanc, I like his podcast. It's pretty good. I also had a call with Nighthawk, so we're gonna at the end of this kind of just chat about it and see what we think about that. So that's nice. Well, then Joe, you weren't here last time, right?
Yeah, no, I wasn't. I can introduce myself.
Yeah, please.
So I'm a recovering medical device rep. I was with an offshoot of Smith & Nephew for a couple of years, and then they got bought by some venture cap, and I got laid off from the golden handcuffs, and I started flipping homes, and one home turned into 2, turned into 10, and then started doing it with 2 and 4 family buildings, and invested passively in a couple friends along the way. You know, they found a flip, and I invested some of my capital in it, and then I had a come to Jesus moment, realized this small residential wasn't what I wanted to do. I felt like I was working too hard, not getting anywhere. And so I started looking to scale up into some multifamily buildings, actively and passively. And that's kind of where I'm at today. You know, we've got a couple under contract and partnering on those. And so I'm kind of excited to learn, I guess, refine the systems on both sides, you know, see what other people are doing, so how I can do it more efficiently. And I'm not raising the capital yet. My partners are taking care of that. So there won't be any like pushy sales calls or anything like that. But, you know, so I'm excited to see how other people do it, how they structure the deals and what you guys are looking for, and eventually tailor my pitches down the road with, you know, seeing what that looks like. So.
Okay. So you're looking less for this group to find syndications and learn how to invest in syndications, but just to learn what maybe people who are looking for syndications are looking for, because you want to be a syndicator. Is that kind of the deal?
Correct. And I have done syndications on a lot of my small, you know, 2s and 4s and a 12 unit and that kind of stuff. But also, I mean, I've got an IRA I'm not a huge fan of the stock market, as I think most people here aren't. So
Yeah.
I'm sick of taking a bloodbath there. And so I'm excited to learn about that and see if I can find a better opportunity for that as well. So
Perfect.
A little bit of both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's great. All right. Did I miss anybody who wasn't here last time?
Jim, I wasn't.
Yeah. Okay. I thought, Mark, I didn't want to call you out, but okay, Mark, if you could give us a couple minutes.
Yeah. So my name is Mark Shooter. I'm in medical devices, and I've been doing that for a while, about 9.5 years. Bought my first single family home as a rental in 2013. I have 5 single family homes in the Columbus area. I did 1 flip years ago, and then bought a 4 unit last year, and did a cash out refinance recently in December. I'm getting more liquid now. So I've got, a few $100,000 I'm looking to invest probably within the next, year or so. And so I'm kind of debating whether or not to buy a smaller apartment complex, going with a partner to go bigger, or just invest passively. So right now I'm just trying to figure that out. So.
Okay, great. Anybody else who wasn't here last time that I missed? All right, perfect. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know at least Jameson will be joining us later. He's trying to wrestle some children into bed, I think. But so thanks for agreeing to move the date up on this. I just thought I was getting a lot of emails and things from people that seemed like they wanted to keep going and not wait, once a month. So as long as we're kind of on lockdown and are able to meet, I think every couple of weeks, if we have stuff to talk about, and we can keep doing the Zoom thing. So that's kind of my goal. Agenda today is I'm going to start out real briefly talking about syndications and some things that specifically people asked about. And I think some of those we briefly talked about last time, so I'm not going to go into detail, but if you have questions, please let me know. Then Steve was nice enough to talk about, he sent out a good document today, and he's going to talk about vetting operators. That's a big thing for me is, a lot of this is it's more about the operator than the deal, right? If you find the right operator, then the deal, they're going to handle the deal for you. That's the whole purpose of this. So that's super important, is vetting the operators. And I'm still figuring that out. So I look forward to hearing from Steve. And then what I'm calling investor spotlight. Sean was looking into a couple things. One is the oil and gas deal from Buck Joffrey. So he's going to talk about that. I tiptoed in and out of that. I never really pulled the trigger. So I'm interested to hear what Sean has to say. And then I find these syndicators everywhere. I found one I got a cold call basically from a guy on Bigger Pockets, and I took it, and turned into a pretty interesting opportunity for triple net lease, industrial triple net lease. So Sean also talked to that guy today. And so he and I are going to chat a little bit about that. And then, as I said, Mike talked to Nighthawk, Michael Blanc. So we're just going to hear a little bit about that. And then TribeVest was Annette, but she's not here. So we can talk about that if we have time and if people are interested, or we can wait till next time. And the last thing on the agenda is, when you have groups like this, I found that it's good to have a name. So far in all my like the things I'm writing down, I call it Columbus Passive Investing Group, which the acronym is CPIG. So I think we ought to think of something better than that. So that's not crucial, but something we should talk about. All right. Anything else to add? Any questions before we get started? All right. So one of the things that people were asking about is, how do you get started in syndications? How do you find out how to invest or what to invest? And I think, Sean is a good example, because he's a very detail oriented and likes to have all his ducks in a row, and he's very technical. And watching him go through this has been a neat experience, because what he's doing is he's calling and talking to several different operators, and the oil and gas thing he's going to talk about. He talked to Buck Joffrey and is in on those deals. And he's cautious and a very smart guy. And so watching him get started made me think, this is kind of how you have to do it. And it's similar to how I started it, except I took some shots that I probably shouldn't have, as I said before to some of you, but that was with my IRA money, which I don't really even think of as, I think I can take bigger shots with that because it's so far away, not as far as it felt like. It's only 10 years now. But so I did some investments that I probably shouldn't have. I think following Sean's path is probably better, because he's making more reasoned decisions, because it's now money and not just IRA money. And with my today money, I'm also making better decisions. So if someone was asking me, how do you get started? One, all of you have started because you're in this group. Two is just start calling up syndicators, because the only way you can invest with them according to SEC rules is if they know you. And the only way they know you is when you fill out one of the forms on their website. They're going to do a 30-minute or an hour-long call, and that's the get to know you. That allows you to be able to get into their syndications. So I recommend you find 3 or 4 of them, especially now that, maybe some of us have a little bit more time. But you just start calling them up and come up with some questions and just start getting to know the people. And then they'll send you some deals and even ask for past deals, so you can just kind of learn how to evaluate them, even if you're not pulling the trigger now, just to start. That's how you get started. And then you find either you find an operator you really like, or you find a deal you really like, and then you just jump in. Now, typically the minimums are going to be 25, 50, 100,000. So if you know that you have, 25 grand, if you find a minimum, and let's say you lose it all, which I don't think will happen, but you lose it all, that's not going to materially change your life. And at some point, the best way to get started is with all these real estate guys podcasts. Everybody says this: you just got to do something. You got to take the step. And so, if you're buying a $100,000 house, you're going to have to put 25 grand down on it. If you're buying a syndication, you got to put 25 grand down on it. So I would just say, go for it and try one and see how it works. Another question was, can you invest in smaller amounts? And really, the answer is unlikely. 25 grand is about the minimum that you can get in on these. I'm doing some research, and if anyone else has ideas, I'd love to hear it on some of the online syndicators, the crowdfunding sites. Some of those I know you can go smaller amounts, but I haven't done any of those except for the farm one that I did just on a lark, really. But I think there's some smaller minimums there. Does anyone have any experience with those? Has anyone done a crowdfunding with a smaller minimum?
I did some a few years back, and it was not a great experience. I kind of did it. I think I invested $5,000 each in two syndications through this. I'm trying to think of it. Realty Shares is what it was. Now
Yeah.
They changed the name, but they were one of the first crowdfunded real estate syndicators that use that platform. But the communication was awful. I would get something every once in a while, then I would have to actually email Realty Shares to ask for information. They did have an investor portal, but that wasn't real useful either. Now that this was early in their game, so I don't know if they've changed. And just because of that experience, and I pretty much, I think I lost a little bit of money, got most of my money back, but I really didn't make anything off of it. But it just wasn't very satisfactory for me, so I would not recommend it. But some of these other funds, crowd sharing funds, may be better now. This was probably, I want to say, about 4 years ago when I did this, maybe 5 years ago. But that beyond that, I really, after that experience, I just gave up on it. So I'm much happier with getting to actually know the sponsors and that kind of thing. So and it may have changed. You may be able to contact the sponsors and drill them with questions, but for me, it was pretty much a waste of time.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm thinking about looking into that more, just because with a couple of other groups I'm involved in, some people are looking for smaller stuff to get into.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've improved a little bit since then, just with time. But I think one thing you really do lose is the ability to talk to the individual sponsor and really get a feel for them and an understanding of them. And I think that's super important, just to get an idea of who you're working with. But the other way to get in with smaller amounts of money is to group together, right? I know Annette was talking about hoping we could get some people from this group to pool funds together and go after some syndications. And if some people are interested in that, she'll talk about that at the next meeting. But that's really the only way, because the syndications that we're looking at, most, minimums, as I said, are 25 to 50 grand. So, to be able to get into 5 of them in a year instead of 1, if you have a group of 5, you can go in at $5 grand a piece. It allows you a little bit of more comfort to get in, because I think I was talking with Sean today, is one of the things about these syndications is let's say you buy a turnkey house for 100 grand, you're putting 25 down. If something happens and you want to get rid of that house, you can sell it for 90 the next day, right? And take a little bit of a loss, but you get some of your capital back. If you're in these syndications, you're locked in. There's very little recourse for you. Now, you could ask somebody to buy your shares out, ask one of the partners, but it's unlikely that you'll find an easy way to get out of that. So you have to recognize that, especially at these deals we're in with Buck Joffrey, they're supposed to be 18 to 16 months return your capital. But with what happened with the coronavirus, they might change their whole plan. They might not be able to get out of them as quickly. So if that's the case, now they went from appreciation deals to cash flow deals. So all that money we put into them might be locked away for longer than we thought. And you just have to be prepared and understand that that's the case. But investing in smaller amounts, I think the best way, and maybe the only way to do that, is to team up. Any questions on that? Yeah.
I don't want to jump ahead, but so the TribeVest, and I know this is kind of getting tabled maybe till next meeting, but the accredited versus non-accredited. So how do you, in TribeVest, does everybody need to be the same accreditation, or is there a way around that when you go through a platform like that?
Okay, so that's a good segue, because the next thing I was going to talk about is accredited versus non-accredited. So it's perfect. So accredited means you are filing single, you make 200 grand a year the last 2 years, roughly, or 300,000 married, or you have $1 million in assets outside of your primary home. So most of these syndicators, I'm finding more that don't require non-accredited or don't require you to be accredited, but most of them want accredited investors only. So the question is, if you're in an LLC, see, I invest all of my syndications through my LLC, but it's a single member LLC, so it's just like me investing on my own. But if you're investing in an LLC, they're going to want to know if all of the members are accredited. So that is not a way to get around it. That being said, and Steve, if I'm saying something wrong, jump in. The the accredited, it's kind of a fuzzy thing, right? My accountant wrote me the letter that I usually give to people to prove that I'm accredited, and I am accredited, but he wrote the letter wrong. The letter doesn't satisfy, it says me and my wife make more than 200 grand a year. That does not satisfy the accredited. And every investment that I've put this in has accepted the letter. So the SEC came up with these rules, and it is completely arbitrary. And it's supposed to protect the investor. But what it does is it locks out everybody but people who make that kind of money. It locks them out of these alternative investments. So I do not advocate lying or not being accurate when someone's asking, because that's just, you're going to get somewhere down the road, you're going to end up getting yourself in trouble. But if you're close to it and your accountant writes a letter and it's more or less truthful and it gets by, it's not, to me, it's not breaking any law, or it's on the syndicator to vet you. And if they vet you wrong, then whatever, right? That's their deal. So that long way of saying that sometimes in the LLCs, they're going to ask each member of the LLC to prove that they're accredited. But some syndicators might not be as thorough on that as others. So I can't answer that, because I've invested in two different groups through TribeVest, where we have all accredited investors, and we were asked. Well, actually, I don't even know, because we just invested with Buck and his group, and we did have to jump through the accredited hoop, but they didn't look at it very carefully, I don't feel like. So I know that's kind of a rambling answer, but I think if you're going to be in an LLC, you need to be accredited to be in the accredited investments. Would you agree with that, Steve?
Yeah, every single PPM I've had to sign will ask you, it's like a 1 or 2 page thing, and you have to sign on that and say that you're accredited. And there's a whole list of things in addition to what you just mentioned. As for LLCs, I think it says in there something about if there's multiple members in the LLC, they're investing as one LLC, each member has to be accredited. Yeah. So I think there is some wording to that effect. Now, I have never been asked to prove it. I do have a letter from my accountant, but I think I used that once, maybe twice. It's pretty much on your honor to be honest with what you're saying. And, they just don't want you to lose your money, obviously, and that's an SEC rule, but I don't know if the onus is on them if something happens, but I have never been asked to prove it. I've never been asked to show my tax returns or anything else like that. So, but yeah, I think really, you know what you're getting into, and if you can't lose that kind of money, then don't invest in it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I try not to get hung up on the accredited versus unaccredited. If they're taking accredited investors and they don't ask the questions properly, and you happen to get to invest with them, I think that's completely fine, because I think it's kind of a bogus rule. I think there's probably better ways to protect people. I think rich people are probably stupider with their money, so I don't think they're protecting anybody. Are there any questions about accredited versus non-accredited?
I have a few. I can maybe weigh in on a little bit of that too as well.
Yeah.
So another way to get around that is on most Regulation B. So it's, there's some SEC filing Regulation B. A lot of syndications are filed at that, and they can take 35 non-accredited friends and family per deal. So friends and family is a really ambiguous term. So a lot of times they'll define it as 3 points of contact or something like that. So if you build a good relationship with a syndicator, you can potentially get in on these things as a friend, because you call them, once a month for 6 months, and then they feel comfortable sending you a deal because you meet the friends tag, and you don't have to be accredited that way. So
that's a really good point. I mean, a lot of the syndicators that I talk to, some of them would just prefer not to have to deal with the non-accredited, because it's easier just to go accredited because there's so much money floating around. But yeah, if you're someone who's not accredited and you really want to get in on one of these deals, that's the best way to do it is just to keep on, develop a relationship and see if you can get in there. That's a great point, Joe. Thank you. All right, the last thing on my little agenda here is talking a little bit about self-directed 401k IRA. A couple of people were asking about that. So if you have an old 401k from a previous employer, or you have an IRA, you can make that self-directed. And self-directed just means you have to have there's a bunch of hoops I'm not going to go through, but you get it under your control. And the best way to do that is to get it under checkbook control if you're going to do more than one investment. It costs a little bit more, but it allows you, like right now I have a self-directed 401k, and I'll talk a little bit about the difference in a minute. But I all the money's in an LLC. So when I want to buy something, I just go ahead and do it on my own. I don't have to ask a trustee, which the other way you'd have to ask a trustee to make the investment. So one of the things I figured out is, I think I mentioned this when I first had my self-directed IRA, it was a pretty significant 401k from a previous employer. And I was just so psyched to do some syndication investing because I just went to the syndication seminar. So why wouldn't I just start throwing money around? Right. And, I guess this shows a little bit of my recklessness because I was just so excited to do it. I thought all the investments were good ones, and I still think they will all pan out. But I wasn't thinking about the tax implications and some other things. It was just, here's my pot of money. It's in my IRA. I don't have another pot of money that I can do this with. So, now looking back, it's kind of silly to do some of the real estate stuff in your IRA because you lose out on depreciation and some of the other tax benefits, right? A lot of the real estate syndications, they do cost segregation, all this other stuff, and you don't really get a good benefit. So now anything that I'm doing currently in my self-directed account, I'm doing mostly like money lending, private lending, or things that don't have tax benefits, so that I'm still getting the 10, 12% return, but I'm not losing out on any tax benefits. Now, if I didn't have capital that I could get the tax benefits with, then I might consider doing it in the self-directed. The other thing with self-directed is anytime, if it's an IRA, self-directed IRA, if you're using leverage, meaning that any syndication you're investing in, or if you're getting a loan on the property, you're going to have to pay taxes inside your IRA for any gain that you have that's attributed to the leverage. So if you have again, the example, if you have a house you buy for 100 and you put 25 down, you have a loan for 75% of the profits on that, you're going to be taxed on. I don't understand tax code, but if you put it in a self-directed 401k, which is basically the same thing, but in a different package, then you can invest and you don't have that UBIT or UDFI tax for leverage. So any questions on that? Anybody have a self-directed IRA or 401k? Okay.
Yeah. I did the EQRP like you did as well. Super easy to set up. It's been very easy to use as well. I haven't hit a tax season with it yet, so I don't have that view yet, but it's been fantastic. And Damien's been really great to ping things off of and get feedback. He's been very responsive. So I've been really happy with that process so far.
Good. And yeah, I don't make any money from Damien, but if you want one of his books, I have a couple of free copies. He sent me a bunch. So I'd be happy to give you a copy if anyone's interested. Just send me an email if you want one. I still have a few.
I was listening to a podcast from Tom Wheelwright, who's a CPA. He was on one of the podcasts, and he said this is an interesting way to utilize your retirement account. But I think if you take out money from your 401k, I think there's a 10% penalty. So say you take out $100,000 from your 401k, you get a 10% penalty. And I'm not talking about borrowing. And then with this 10% penalty, you're going to be paying $10,000 to the government. If you invest in a syndication and they do the cost segregation study, you'll get the bonus depreciation in year one. You may get back, or you may be able to deduct like $80,000, $90,000 off your tax return. So if you really have a lot of money that's just sitting there in your 401k, that's one strategy I guess you can utilize. And even though you have to shell out $10,000 at first, you're going to get that back, in your tax return ultimately, and come out ahead hopefully. And at the end, hopefully you're in a better investment too versus the mutual funds.
Now, when you also have to pay tax on that, on the gain on that, right? So I guess the whole 100 wouldn't be gained, but so let's say if you already
Yeah, that's true. But if you have cash, let's say you have cash, and then there's no gain there, obviously.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Or if you have it now, you probably don't have gains. You might have losses, so you can
That's
use
true.
those.
right.
All right. So that's all I have. Are there any questions on starting a syndication or any of the things I've talked about? Anybody have any comments on that?
Whenever you set up your self-directed, you have to take the whole fund, or can you take a portion of it and set aside the self-directed?
You can take, like, let's say you have $1 million in a 401k. You can take 20 grand, 200 grand, or 800 grand and put it in a different bucket. You just roll that part over, and you can keep the rest of it in whatever IRA you already had it in. Yeah, so you don't have to do the whole thing.
Hey, I haven't come across this, but it seems like you could do it. Does anyone here know if you can make the self-directed 401k a Roth?
Yeah, there are certain limitations. If you make a certain amount of money, you cannot put in money into an IRA, for example, pre-tax. So what you can do is and this is IRAs, and this may apply to 401ks as well. But with what I do is I do a backdoor IRA, and you can Google that term. And what you do is you put in the money. So it's like for an IRA, it might be $5,000 or $6,000 a year, and my wife and I can do that. So we both put in that money, and then immediately we have them convert that to a Roth IRA. And that way there's no, and so the problem is when you convert is you get the taxable gain. So let's say I invested in something and it made 10%, I would be taxed on that. But with this method, if you do it immediately, then there's nothing that I earned. So then you can do it that way, and then so you can convert that automatically to the Roth version. Now, if this has been sitting in the IRA for a long time, then you would obviously have to pay those taxes, unfortunately. So, but going forward, once you have it established, it's kind of nice to have that Roth conversion already set up, and then you can just do the backdoor going forward.
And you can have a self-directed Roth, I'm fairly certain.
Right.
That's what I'm fairly certain too. I've just never, probably because of the way that everyone seems to fund self-directed 401ks, I've just never seen one. But I told someone that I thought they could do it. I'm looking for like the person who's done it. So
Chad,
It's in that book, the EQRP book. He talks
is
about
it?
Roths in there as well. Yeah.
Okay, I read it, but I obviously didn't read it that closely.
Yeah. He had elements in there of speaking to that. So there's some pieces to that. He'd be a good one to consult with to ask about it as well. I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to you about it.
I've been researching some whole life strategy around the same kind of similar strategy, only with the whole life, you're borrowing not from yourself, you're borrowing against the policy. So your money, so if you have a $50,000 annual premium, you're able to borrow that money while that still is growing at 5.5%, and then your interest rate doesn't have to be paid back that same year. So you can actually have an interest-free loan essentially. So I've been this past week I've been reaching out to a few folks that sell that product, and it's actually pretty intriguing. I think it could be pretty powerful. There's a lot of moving parts, but are any of you guys doing any of that with whole life right now?
Yeah.
Are you talking about infinite banking?
Yes.
What you're talking about?
Yeah.
I know that if anyone's interested, I've met this guy once. He's an accountant or a CPA, works at a CPA firm, and he's in process. He owns like 15 some odd properties of pretty close to becoming his own banker, essentially. And he can walk through all the tax advantages and everything. It kind of blew my mind when I heard about it. I didn't do much of it, and he kind of told me about the whole process. I don't know if anyone else does it here, but I can always lend that contact out.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, Steve, go ahead.
No, I've been doing that. I actually haven't borrowed any money out of it, but to your point, Mike, the one thing you also have to remember with the interest is your money inside the life insurance policy is compounding versus when you have to pay it back, it's actually simple interest. So you're actually getting that arbitrage right there as well. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Yeah, and I have several of those policies, and the one thing I would say, because I used to, when I was a financial advisor, I was selling those policies, and Jameson can talk to this better than I can because he's currently doing that. But the key is to find an advisor who understands how to set it up so that your policy is maximized to generate cash rather than maximized to generate death benefit, if that's what you're going for. And if you're doing the bank on yourself or be your own banker, or whatever you want to call it, it really should be maximized for cash. And a lot of times, if you don't find the right person that knows how to set it up that way, your policy won't perform in the right way. And I've used it a couple of times to take loans out of it. And the nice thing is, as you said, Mike, you can earn 2 different returns at the same time with the same dollar. So it's a really, really interesting strategy. And I think if enough people are interested, that's one of the things I wanted to maybe put on the agenda for a future meeting, just to kind of chat about. Because I know Jameson did a presentation for Coin that was really good. So if we can get him to chat for a few minutes, I think that'd be a good topic for another meeting. But I don't really want to go into too much here. Has anybody besides Steve done these?
I just started one last September. So just funded the first year, but I haven't borrowed anything from it yet.
Okay, but you already have cash value?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So you probably had it set up correctly, because a lot of these policies don't even generate cash value for the first 3 years or so. So if you set it up right, you can get access to it earlier than that. But we'll table that conversation for the next time if I can volunteer Jameson to chat about it. He's nodding. Okay. All right.
The real estate guys just did a podcast on that too. That was really good. I forget who the guy was they had on, but I thought I'm in the soak everything up and absorb. And I'm like, oh, great. Here's another thing I got to learn now. So it was really interesting.
Yeah. I actually got my policy through Buck Joffrey's Wealth Formula Banking. So he's got a lot of resources. If you I think that's a URL, just wealthformulabanking.com. And you can check that out too. So I work with Christian and Rod, who are really, really informed about this.
If you go to their site, they've got 2 videos up, and they're like 20 or 30 minutes. So I have not watched them personally because I know what they're going to say. But 20 to 30 minutes, I know Christian and Rod, or at least have been talking with them a little bit. Those are probably good videos if you're looking for a place just to start.
Right.
All right, cool. Well, we'll table the rest of the conversation on that and move on to Steve talking about vetting operators. So, Steve, I will hand it over to you.
All right. I think you guys maybe saw your email, and there's a Word document that I kind of put together, a little hodgepodge of different people who know a little bit more about this than I do. So, and I put in my 2 cents worth here and there. And then also the second PDF was a questions asked a potential sponsor by Brian Burke. He's a big syndicator, apartment guy, and he just wrote a book called Hands Off Investing. So that you can check out this. I think it's like 70 some questions you can ask a syndicator. So I won't go through that, but I'm going to cover a lot of the highlights probably in my Word documents here. So, but anyways, there's a lot of terms of synonyms, I guess, for syndicator. There's operator, sponsor, GP, general partner, managing member, and principal. So you'll see all those different kinds of terms, and I'll probably use them interchangeably as well. So in Vanessa Peters' book, she's a syndicator, or she's kind of more of a money person, capital raiser, I guess. But anyways, in her book, she talks about know, like, and trust. And she says, there's the 3 T's: trust, team, and track record. And in the first point of trust, Jim was talking about, get on the phone and talk to people, and you kind of get a feel for whether or not you're going to like the person or not. If they're real, I get turned off by real cocky people, so I'm not going to do deals with them. Just feel them out and see what they're like. Now, if it's a team of people, then you may need to talk to more than one person, because a lot of these teams will have investor relations people who are used to talking to people and schmoozing them and that kind of thing. So you may want to actually try to talk to the key person on that team, so that you're not just talking to a marketer, if you will. And after that, you should be getting some emails from them. You get on their list, and then they should be sending you deals or sending you some correspondence. A lot of people will send like an email blog kind of thing once a week, whatever, to kind of keep you posted. But anyways, whenever you ask a question, you should always get a response within a day, 24 hours. I mean, if you have to email them twice, that may not be a really good indication that they're going to be very responsive once you give them $50,000 or whatever to them. So that kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable when I have someone who's not very responsive with their email. In terms of updates, when you do, you ask them how often are they giving updates. I mean, monthly updates might be a little bit too much, although it's not really out of the realm. I do have some of my syndicators who are giving me monthly updates, quarterly updates at a minimum. If they're doing it twice a year, that's not enough. So I would definitely ask them if they're doing these quarterly updates. And then in terms of getting paid, some syndicators pay once a month, which is in my opinion kind of rare. Most people are doing quarterly distributions, and then of all the people, all the syndicators, Western Wealth actually does it once a year. I don't know if any of the other one, Jim, if that's different, let me know. But it was surprising me that they're only doing once a year distributions. But anyways.
Yeah, real quick on that, Steve. The reason I understand they do that is because they're a Canadian company, and it's a pain to get the distributions out any quicker.
Okay.
But that's the only reason, from what I understand.
All right. Okay,
yeah,
so
that's correct, Jim. That's exactly why.
Okay, good to know. And then you can also ask for a sample report. So they should, if they've given updates, obviously they're going to have sample reports, even if they're deals that's 2 or 3 years out. And sponsors should have an open book with their financials. There's nothing that they should be hiding from you. You're a part of the deal. You own a percentage of that apartment complex or self-storage facility. So you should be able to see that. I mean, you're a partner in this, so you should be able to see that. If they're being sneaky about stuff like that, then obviously that's you can't really trust them. And a lot of these sites will have investor portals, and you can actually just open up the Excel spreadsheet, and it's a little bit overwhelming, but you can you can probably ask for some financials that way as well. You can ask for a previous PPM or private placement memorandum. That document's usually going to be like 80 to 100 plus pages long, but you can at least get a feel for the fee structure, because they may tell you one thing, but if in the last PPM they're doing something else, then you can know that their structure is this way, at least on that one deal. And the most important split is that limited partner, general partner split. Usually it's around 70-30, give or take 5 or 10%. But anyways, that's, on that second, third page of this document, you'll see some different fees there. So you can look through that on your own time. And one thing I thought about was, and I've never done this, but I'm wondering, why can't you ask for person A's K1 that they gave out? Because all they have to do is block out the name, their private information, and it says they invested $25,000 or $50,000 on a deal. And then that way you can see if they're utilizing bonus depreciation like they said they were going to. You can verify the income. If you can get like later year K1s, verify that the rental income is in fact going up on those investments. So I think that's just another way to kind of find out what investors are actually making, and not just something that's put on a marketing piece. And then I think one of the most important things is, do they have skin in the game? Are they actually investing their own money into the deals? Because I think that's for me, pretty much a deal breaker if they're not investing their own money, because that means they don't believe in what they're doing there. So to me, that's a huge deal.
Steve, on that,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. Do you check or ask if they are investing on the limited partner side only, or on the GP side?
The ones I know of are investing on the LP side, but I can't think of anyone that's been doing that. Do you know of anyone that's done that on the GP side?
No, I just always ask. I don't even know I'm sure they can invest on the GP side, but I guess I like to know that they're investing on the LP side, so they're actually partnering with me as LP and GP, right? So they're on the LP side. I mean, the one deal that I really wanted to do, the only reason I didn't do it is because they weren't taking any or investing at all in it. Which I forget. I think it was Jeremy Roll who said that he doesn't pay as much attention to that, because he thinks that if they're getting enough fees and other ways to earn money, that they don't care that if they're losing money on the LP side. But I disagree with that, because the people that I'm looking at, they're usually putting a significant amount in there on the LP side, so they're not going to make more fees than they pay out than their contribution on the. So if you don't have skin in the game, I'm out also. I'm just the same as Steve.
Right. Okay, so the next T was team. Jeremy Rowland, Hunter Thompson, another big syndicator, they will actually do background checks on the general partners, team members. And so they go to a website called tlo.com. I've not personally done background checks. I don't know, Jim, have you actually done any background checks? Yeah, it costs a little bit of money. I'm sure it's not going to be exorbitant in terms of pricing, but something you could do if you have no other references. And that's the next few lines here. So there's two different types of references you can get. One is from other passive investors where, and I would try to get investors who invested in more than one deal and maybe even one who has invested in a deal that has gone full cycle. In other words, they've bought the property and then they actually sold the property. So you can actually verify their IRRs and that kind of thing. Ask them, how are they in terms of dealing with and that kind of thing. And then Hunter Thompson also says you should be asking for, and again, I've not done this, but asking for professional referrers. He's saying it's great to talk to seasoned passive investors, but if you talk to the bankers that they work with, the third-party construction companies that they work with, insurers, CPAs, what is it like to work with them professionally? Because they may have a different slant on things. And it's probably not a bad idea to be talking to the commercial property management because they can make or break your deal. Property management, as most of you guys have done, maybe some investing in small family or small apartments and that kind of thing, single family homes. If you have a property management, I mean, that can really make your life easy or hell. So anyways, you may want to ask who they've worked with, and on this particular property that you maybe want to invest in, is this their first one or is this their third one or 10th one that they're managing? If it's a first time property management, that's not really a make or break, but you do have a little bit of comfort if they've done 8 other deals in Houston versus maybe one deal, or this is their first deal in Atlanta. And, unless you get some really good references from other people about the property management, I'd be a little bit leery about that. And you could also verify the track record of the PMs, including the history of where they're actually at in terms of submarkets. Also, if the PM is typically used to working with Class D properties or Class C properties, they may not be a great fit for Class A property that you're going to be investing in, or vice versa. So make sure that they're used to working in that kind of property class. And in terms of track record, there's a whole lot of stuff on this. How many units do they own? How many properties is that? Have you gone full cycle with them? So a lot of the more inexperienced people obviously may not have gone full cycle with them. So you have to be a little leery about that. And try to get their entire track record. So if they've invested in 15 properties, try to get all 15, get some information on all 15 of them in terms of what are their annual returns so far, if they've gone full cycle, what has been the IRR and that kind of thing. So don't just trust what they're saying over the phone with you. And you can also do a comparison with actual returns with the pro forma numbers. You get their old PPMs and then maybe compare their actual returns and make sure that they're somewhat accurate. And if this is a new strategy or not for the sponsor, that could be different for people. I think Western Wealth had a deal. It was a 55 and older community that I think I sold last year, and I wasn't in on that deal, but they're not used to working with that kind of population, and so they said we're going to exit out of this. I think their IRRs were still in the upper 20s when they did sell it, but I think they weren't used to that population, so they decided to exit that deal early. So, anyways, if they're used to doing light value add. Now they're going to take on this total reposition. That's maybe not something you'd want to do. I mean, that'd be like asking me to do a flip right now, which I've never done. So that would be something that you probably wouldn't put too much trust in me to do that. And then, and again, I mentioned if it's a different kind of community like a 55 and older versus a college rental apartment. And then I like to ask, what percentage of your investors have reinvested or have invested multiple times with you guys? I think that's important because that kind of tells you, are they communicating well? Are they paying their quarterly distributions on time and that kind of thing? So, because I'd be a little bit leery about investing with someone else if they're not doing what they say they're doing. Are they doing what they say they were going to do? And then, just make sure their investment strategy strategies match up with your investment strategies. You know, are you looking to invest in cash flowing properties, or are you looking for more value add kind of properties? So that really, I think you really have to figure out what they're doing, and then just kind of match your goals with that. And this, I think I sent you guys a link on Hunter Thompson's conference. He kind of went over his rules for syndicators. He says he wants 10 years of experience in that, in syndicating, 10 comparable assets. So if they have, make sure that if you're investing in a multifamily, make sure they have 10 multifamilies, if it's 10 self-storage facilities or whatever. $100 million under management, which means they would have had to have raised at least $30 million in equity, 1 million square foot under management. And for each of these kinds of deals, multifamilies, he likes to see 100 units per deal, self-storage 400 units, senior housing 100 units, and retail 13 units. And then he also made a point about make sure there's adequate parking. If it's in a downtown kind of area, make sure there's adequate parking, because that can be a hassle, obviously, for the tenants. And visibility from the roads and highways, 20,000 vehicles per day. And he likes to invest in 500,000, a population of 500,000 or more, and make sure that the city that they're in is not dominated by one industry that takes over 25% of the economy.
Hey, Steve, if I
yep.
can interrupt just real quick. I don't know how many of you have seen like the executive summary or seen an actual deal. And most of the ones that I've seen from the syndicators I'm dealing with, they have all that information. I'm looking over here because that's where the spreadsheet is. But the information that Steve just went over, almost all syndicators will include that, meaning how many vehicles go by a day, the population, the industries. I mean, the Western Wealth deals, they have little flags that they stick on a map that show where the major employers are, the major hospitals, universities. So those are all items that if you don't see them in the main executive summary or the pitch deck that they're showing you, and that's kind of a little red flag. Like, why aren't they presenting this information to you?
Right. No, that's a good point. They summarize it pretty well in those little summaries there.
Yeah.
And then also like Western Wealth and also Ashcroft Capital, I think they will actually include in that those pages their actual returns per year, even if they haven't gone full cycles, like 2% the first year and then 3%, whatever. They'll list all those deals in kind of a spreadsheet form. And then last few things here, Jeremy Roll, as we mentioned his name a few times. He's been in, I think, almost 80 different syndications, and this is pretty much his life work is being a passive investor. So a few things that he was talking about was to make sure you verify the experience of these people. If they have not been investing before 2012, then their record should be pretty good, because it's been pretty much the golden age in terms of multifamily, it's been kind of a golden age for real estate returns for multifamily and self-storage and that kind of thing. If they've been doing it for 30 years, well then, yeah, they probably were hit back in 08, 09. So the record back then probably was not quite as good, but nonetheless, just make sure you check their records. He actually likes to fly out and meet the sponsors. I've not personally done that, but he likes to get a tour of the area that the apartment complex is in. And he said, do they really know the area, not just the apartment complex area that it's surrounded by? So, but anyways, again, he talks about what's their strategy and what's your strategy. So make sure it's not any different. And just lastly here, just a note about capital raisers. A lot of these syndicators will use capital raisers, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I think the SEC might be kind of cracking down on this a little bit if they are finding out that capital raisers are getting a piece of the GP side and all they are doing is bringing in money. They have to really do a lot more than that. Jim and I were kind of emailing about this earlier on about capital raisers and that kind of thing and the SEC rules. But we got to make sure that, if you talk to the capital raiser, that's not the person you necessarily want to be talking to. You want to really talk to the GP. They're going to really know the deal. They're going to be the boots on the ground and that kind of thing. So make sure you talk to someone in the GP who's really the true GP and not kind of a sub-sponsor of this. So that's pretty much all I had. And then on that last page, I have all the different kinds of fees. I'm not going to go through that. Just if they seem to be really out of line, then you might, that could be another deal breaker. And just a few things. Acquisition fee, I've not seen too outrageous of acquisition fees. That just means that they'll get a piece of whatever the purchase price is. And one of the syndicators on that conference from Hunter Thompson was saying that really doesn't make us a whole lot of money. It just keeps the light on and keeps our employees paid for several months. So, and then the disposition fee, I have a little bit of a problem with a high disposition fee because they're already getting 30% or 20% of the deal. Now you add on 1 or 2% of that can jack it up to 21 or 22 or 31 or 32% instead. So I don't know why they have to have a disposition fee in there, because they're going to be getting a lot of money on the back end, more than the average investor. So it's just look over that. This was taken from a book by Sean Cook. It's called Investing in Real Estate Private Equity. And actually I read that through Kindle Unlimited, and it was actually free. So if you want to look at a syndication book, that's a good resource. So that's pretty much all I had.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve?
Good stuff. Thank you, Steve, for putting that together.
I was gonna give a shout out to Steve, and I already did this, but I want to thank you again, Steve, on that for sending that link to the Intelligent Investors Real Estate Conference. If you guys haven't, I think there's 30 or 33 panel discussions, something like that, and some of them are an hour, some of them are only 20 minutes, 30 minutes. There's a lot of really, really good topics in there. And the hosts, the moderators, as well as the panel, people that are involved in the panel are very, very sharp. So if you haven't taken the chance to register for that, I think you had to do it by today, right, Steve? Or by tomorrow, maybe? I think it was today or tomorrow. Yeah, today. So hopefully maybe that's by midnight tonight you can do it. Otherwise you have to pay for it. And to do it for free, there's some really good content on there. So thanks again for passing that along, Steve.
No, you're welcome.
Which videos in particular do you think are best, or what do you recommend?
Well, I can tell you, I went through them and just picked out 10 or so that looked of interest, and I knocked off 5 of them so far. And with regard to this group, this evening, there's one. It's 10.1, which is the 7 stages of passive investing. 23.1 is passive investment landscape, and then also 8.1 is another one on passive investing. And those 3 were really good. And then some of the others that I listened to, multifamily was good. And then there was one on self-storage units as well as mobile home, which is something that's of interest to me. And those were all good. So all the ones that I've listened to have been very good.
Great, thank you.
Sean, could you send out an email with the ones that you've listened to that you liked? And then if anyone else listens to any other ones and you like them, can you send those numbers to the group? And if you listen to any that you don't think are worth the time, please send that also. That way we can all because I've been listening to a couple. I didn't pay attention to what name. I just kind of randomly browsed. And that, again, is the difference between me and Sean. He's more thorough.
One of the many.
Yeah. All right. All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions for Steve? I have a couple if nobody else does. All right. So the one thing that I really have to echo, and this drives me crazy for some of the deals that I'm in that I'm really frustrated with, are the response times. And it seems like a minor thing, but if you're trying to set up an appointment with somebody or whatever it is, and you're just doing it in the investigation stage where you're thinking about giving them $25,000 of your hard-earned money and they don't get back to you within 24 hours, it's done, right? I'm just not going to put up with it, because I have some now that I'm in the deal and I cannot get any information. And this was before COVID. After COVID, there's no chance I'm going to get information from these people. And it drives me nuts. So Dan Hanford from PassiveInvesting.com, I just got into one of his deals. I was talking to Sean about something today, and I just said, well, let me ask Dan real quick, send him an email. I had an email response back within an hour. And so that guy, he's going to get my money because every time he responds quickly. And it might not mean he's the greatest investor in the world, but it means I'm always going to know where I stand. So that's one thing that I really liked that you mentioned, Steve. The other thing is,
can I interrupt you for 1 second?
Oh yes, please.
I'm getting my money returned, I think tomorrow from a syndication. So this is a retail center that I invested in. I think it was early February where I sent in the money. So this is a guy I met at the Secret Successful Syndication, the real estate guys meeting, maybe like 5-6 years ago. He's a physician, not Buck Joffrey, but anyways, another physician. And I'm like, oh, and he's got an MBA, and he does the physician thing 1 day a week, and he does the real estate thing 4 days a week. And I'm like, and we kind of kept in contact and that kind of thing. And he sends me all his deals and that kind of thing. And then finally I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this deal. I kind of felt like, yeah, he's a nice guy. I've talked to him a few times. And anyway, his communication was horrible. I just to get into the deal, I wanted to give him money. It took him like 2 or 3 days to let me know if I could even be in the deal. I'm like, okay, I'll just blow that off, whatever. So then I get into the deal, get the paperwork, and I think I had some other question or whatever. And it took like another 2 or 3 or 4 days to get back to me. I think I emailed him again. Like, what the heck? And then I get this email 2 days ago and said, so we're going to be, since we talked about returning your money and for this retail center, and some of you wanted to be in this fund that we're going to be doing, so we'll just transfer that money over to this one. And I'm like, I emailed him and said, so this retail center didn't go through? I mean, what the heck? And he sent an email out like 3 weeks ago about the fact that they're going to sell, they weren't going to go through with this deal. And so I'm like, so here I am.
Wow.
I'm like, what the hell? So I was so pissed off. So I just said, please return my money and hopefully they'll be in the bank tomorrow. So I'm not going to ever do a deal with them again. I mean, and I consider him sort of an acquaintance, a friend, colleague, and it's unfortunate. So, but yeah, his communication was just horrible.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. You don't realize it, but it is a big deal, the communication. The other thing that I liked what you said is asking the question, what % of investors have reinvested? That is a great question, and I'm going to ask that from everybody from now on. And if they're fishy about it, you'll know it. But if they tell you, most, because one of the guys told me what their percentage was, and it was like most people put the money back in, and that's really a solid indicator. Again, if they're going to be dishonest, then it doesn't really indicate anything. But I think it's just a great question to ask. The last thing is the visit that Jeremy Roll said. Whenever I've done turnkey investing, I've gone to visit, and that's putting, buying $100,000 house, but it's still the same amount invested, right? 25 grand. I haven't visited except for the Western Wealth deals. When I went to Buck's conference, we went through a few, but if we ever get back to where travel is allowed again, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary to visit, but if you're going to do a few deals with somebody, think about, you're spending 25 or 50 grand on this. It is not outrageous to spend $500 or $1,000 going to visit someone just to see, so just something to think about. But Steve, that was great. I appreciate the information.
Welcome.
Anything else for Steve? All right, perfect. So now I want to, we're about an hour in, so I want to kind of see if we can not go for 2 hours, obviously, but I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk about this oil and gas thing, and then after that, Sean, just continue on to the mag, and I'll pop in and give my thoughts. But just tell us what you did for oil and gas, and also the other deal you did today.
Sure. Yeah, with it being 9:05, maybe what I'll do with this oil and gas is if anybody has a real hankering for more information, I've got a load of notes that I took from the webinar. Connect with me afterwards. I'm happy to share that. I'll just hit the highlights right now, sort of the macro level. And then if you want additional information, reach out to me. It's hard to believe that this webinar took place already 3 weeks ago. And at that point, it was a perfect storm in the oil and gas industry, and that storm has only risen even more. So I think if oil and gas is your thing, this is certainly the time to do it. And I could not be more impressed with the folks from Resolute. I guess I should back up a little bit too. This opportunity, this webinar came about through Buck Joffrey. So it was through Buck, but it's Resolute who's working with Homebound to get this done. And those two groups, Homebound and Resolute, they couldn't have been more impressive as far as this space is concerned. I think I had mentioned in our last call that one of the things that an investment that I've been turned off on in the past was a fracking deal that I got involved in almost probably 12 years ago or so. So oil and gas is not really my thing because I still have that bad taste in my mouth. But I thought, you know what, it's coming from Buck. The time seems right with oil and gas. I might as well listen to it and see what's going on. And so these guys seem very, they're very astute. They're very smart. They're definitely on top of it. If I was going to do oil and gas, it would be through this group. They started off by going through a very detailed history of West Texas crude. So it almost became a geology class, which was over my head there for a little while. And then, which was great. I mean, the background piece was great. I don't want to take that away from them. But they talked about the historical cycles of oil and gas and why they think this is a great time. Obviously, you're seeing everything that you see going on in the media. But even before that, they pegged this time frame as being very good because all the data that they have and the reports that they've run, the modeling that they've done, there seems to be about 3 cycles that happen every 20 years. And right now we're in that 3rd cycle for this 20-year time frame. And it started in 2019, at least according to their information. So that's why they started pinpointing it. And then it just continued to get better and better and better from their eyes. But they got into, the fact that there's a 13 million barrel surplus right now because obviously COVID going on, people aren't using it as much. And they talked about the storage issues. They talked about how the U.S. is almost at a point where we are self-sustained in producing our own oil. We do produce enough oil here in the U.S. That we could be independent. But the problem is the way that we've built our factories and our plants or refinery plants is that what we produce out of the soil in the U.S. is much heavier. So we have to bring oil deposits and surplus from overseas that isn't as heavy to mix and blend with our oil in order for the plants to run as smoothly as they need to. So they got into all kinds of stuff, and it was fascinating. It was very well done. But the deal itself basically came down to the tax benefits, the income potential, the growth potential, and the diversification. Those were really the 4 key elements of this. And the tax benefits, you can write off 100% of it in year 1. So that's obviously very, very huge. And they issue K-1s every year in a timely manner so that you can use them, use the package in your filings for a normal tax season as opposed to having to file extensions while you wait for the K-1s to come in. And that's a big thing for me. As Jim pointed, I'm sort of I'm not an accountant, but that could have been my second career. And then I'm very buttoned up and have things just in certain ways. And so I really don't like having to file extensions with my taxes. So that was, of interest to me and certainly a huge advantage. The income potential is there because of production. They fully believe that once COVID gets behind us and even by the end of the year, demand will be back up to where it was. Now, this was, again, 3 weeks ago when this took place. I'm not sure that any of us on the call, including the experts, thought that we'd still be where we are now and just opening up the states. But they still thought that by the end of the year, demand will be back. So you've got that income potential. And then you've got the growth potential through the increase in reserves, oil reserves. So that was basically the deal in a nutshell. And when it came down to, for me, is one, as I just told you guys, I'm not oil and gas, but I in looking for the right opportunity, wouldn't mind trying to give it a go. It was an accredited deal, and that didn't bother me. That was fine there. The thing for me that was probably the biggest sticking point is the fact that it was a $75,000 min. And so the $75,000 doesn't scare me, but what I want to do is I'd rather have 3 deals at 25 or maybe a deal at 25 and another deal at 50. I don't want to have one deal at 75 because as one of their key bullet points, diversification, that's mine as well, as having a well-diversified plan in place, or at least trying to get to that point. Because I forget who it was that opened up tonight talking about the market, not being a big fan of the market. I am probably the only guy on this call that is a big fan of the market. I'm not a big fan of the market right now, but I am a big fan of the market. And Jim and Jameson are laughing because they know how heavily invested I am in the market. So for me, it is about diversification. And so putting 75,000 into one deal doesn't do it for me. So between the oil and gas thing and just truly not understanding it well enough to feel comfortable with it, I felt comfortable with what they were presenting and the individuals themselves. But the topic itself and having a bad taste in my mouth, and then the 75,000 on top of it, having, a pretty decent chunk of money all in one basket, just sort of scared me off the deal itself. But again, coming from Buck and what the Resolute guys and the Homebound guys presented, I wouldn't have any problems, backing them. So I don't know if there's any questions around that, or Jim, if that's what you were looking for, that's good enough.
Yeah, that was perfect. I went through this process about a year ago and thought about doing it, and I think the minimum was too high for something like that for me. And the one thing is, this is one of the few investments that you can write off the entire amount against W-2 income. It's not just the passive income. So that doesn't help me at all because I don't have W-2. But for you W-2 guys, that would be a real key reason to think about doing it if it was something that interested you. Any questions for Sean on that, guys?
So theoretically, so if that went well for you, what kind of returns could you expect?
Yeah, they were pegging anywhere from 8.25% to 10%. And to me, most of the deals out there are in that same range, if not better. And so when I looked at that coupled with everything else I just talked about, I'm like, you know what? I can get the same return somewhere else on a deal where I can get my arms around it, feel much better about the inner workings of the deal. Again, not the people, put that aside, but the actual deal itself and the components of the deal. I just thought, okay, I'm gonna pass on that.
Cool. All right, you want to chat about MAG?
Yeah, so this is a deal that Jim sent to me just this week, and then the webinar was, I don't even know, was it yesterday or the day before? It all runs together. I think it was actually last night. I don't remember now, but it's a pretty interesting deal in that it's a triple net lease sale leaseback. So the sponsor is buying this property in Dallas Fort Worth, and it's the tenant is an aerospace defense contractor. So their clients are the Department of Defense, U.S. Department of Defense, Bell Helicopter, L3 Technologies, and Lockheed and Boeing. So a lot of that infrastructure, transit stuff, mostly related obviously to military action. But they're looking to sell it, use that equity to put back into their facilities and into their operation. They've been in business over 40 years, great track record, great revenue, through the up and down election cycles of Democrat, Republican, and you guys know roughly the difference there with regard to their philosophy on military spending. But they've made it all the way through and continue to keep on churning and doing really well. What's interesting about this deal is that it's, like I said, it's triple net lease. So you as an investor, you don't have to worry about anything. The tenant for Aero, which is the tenant, takes care of everything. Capital improvements, expenditures, insurance, taxes, all that stuff. So you're basically, hopefully, reaping the benefits of a great investment. But there's 8 buildings there as opposed to just one building. And I think that's intriguing because if something were to go south, you as an investor relying on the sponsor to hopefully then do something with this property, and they've got 8 buildings that they could parcel out and find, multitude of different tenants to go in there, or if For Aero decides to downsize production, then frees up some space, then they might be able to sublet some of the space and get some revenue that way, or at least maintain some revenue that way. So it's very intriguing from that aspect. The deal itself, they're looking at a 5 to 7 year hold period. And then what they would do is look to sell this to institutional investors or a REIT. And I had a conversation with one of the partners at MAG Capital today, and that's exactly, Jim thought that would be what their exit strategy would be, and I confirmed that is what their strategy is It just depends on when in that 5 to 7 year time frame it would be. So what they do is years 1 through 5, it's an 8% return. And then 6 and 7, it's an 8.5% return. And then after that, it's a 10% return. And then as an investor, it's an 80-20 split on the proceeds of the sale. So the investors get 80% and the sponsors get 20%. And then, and that's on preferred. That's on the preferred, projections. And then anything above that, then it's a 50-50 split as far as the sale goes. If cash flows should be higher than the preferred rates of the 8.5, or 10%, that's actually going to the sponsor. I threw this by Jim to see if he knew, and maybe Steve, the terminology that they used was the sweep, which is that profit that's coming in above the preferred rate. So in this case, let's say they end up bringing in 10, 11%. So that's 2 or 3 percentage points above the preferred rate. That's called the sweep. That sweep goes to the sponsor. So unlike a multifamily deal where if your return is, projected 15%, you're getting the 15%. You're not capped out. You're capped out here at those different percentages, and then it's going to the sponsor. And part of that reason was it's twofold. One, because this is predictable. You have one tenant, and there's rent coming in every month. In fact, in this case, because of COVID, this is a pretty big deal. I forgot to mention that in their negotiations, what they did is they negotiated for a full year's month up front at closing to solidify the deal, which is pretty interesting because of everything that we've got going on. So these sponsors and the investors then will automatically get some cash flow because there's going to be 12 months of rent there up front that they're going to be able to collect. And that's a very unique thing. I asked them about that, and that is because of the situation that we've got going on right now. That is not a typical contractual negotiation tactic. That is something that is unique to this to get the deal done. And so that sweep percentage above the preferred rate goes to the sponsor because this is predictable, and it's not unlike multifamily where it's not as it potentially is not as predictable because you've got tenant issues, you got vacancy issues, you could have some capital expenditure issues. You don't have all of that here. So your 8% is going to be 8%. Your 8.5 is going to be 8.5. Your 10% will be 10%. So they get to keep the additional, the surplus, that sweep, if you will, for that reason, as well as they set aside that extra in capital surplus should something go south with the deal, and then now the sponsor is responsible for capital improvements because that tenant is no longer there, the tenant moved out, tenant filed bankruptcy, whatever the case is, they want some surplus there to make the property more attractive if they have to sell it or to make it more attractive to rent out. So a couple things there are a little different than your multifamily passive aggressive deals through sponsors. Just going through my notes here, Jim, while I do that, why don't you jump in with anything you got?
So this company, the only thing they do are these sale leasebacks. So they'll go to a company, industrial type company like this, and they will buy the property and then lease it back. So it's already got a tenant. They've already got a tenant. They've agreed to the lease terms. This one I think is great because, everyone's worried about rent with the COVID situation, but you got, we got 12 months rent for sure that they've already paid by the time this closes. So they've been doing this for 10 years, and they've done a ton of deals, and they had a little map where they showed all the deals that they've done. And I just like it because it is the triple net lease where you already have a tenant, everything's set, and you're just kind of cruising. So one thing that is on a lot of the deals, they have what's called a preferred return, and that's what Sean was talking about, and they call it the pref. And I don't have a whole lot of deals that have the pref, but it's basically the first 8% goes to the investors. Now, if they don't hit that 8%, that's paid back at the end. When they either refinance or sell and send capital back, that's where we do they give you 100% of your capital is returned, and then any profits after that are 80-20, right? Was it 80-20? or 70-30, whatever Sean said.
80-20.
80-20 until they get to the 18% IRR. And that's just an arbitrary number they picked at 18% IRR. After that, it's split 50-50. So we get the upside, and then the better the sponsor does in returns, then they get a little bit more of the upside. So I really like this deal. It's a $50,000 minimum, but for the prime investors, this is the only company I've seen do this. They actually let you have a smaller minimum the first time. So I'm going in at 25 grand just to give them a try. I talked to this guy in March, and he didn't let me in the first deal because he didn't know me yet. And the SEC rules, you got to get to know me or whatever. And then this deal came up, and I don't see any holes in it. It's not a huge return, but it's, the 8% isn't that fantastic, but the upside on the back end is good. And the fact that the triple net lease, I really like that. And it's not retail triple net, it's industrial. So I think it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and I think it checks, some of the boxes that Steve mentioned, that you've mentioned as well, Jim. I mean, they've got some skin in the game. They've done their homework on this thing. They're buying it from a private equity firm that was also had some investment in it. So the private equity firm did their homework way up front. So they're piggybacking off of that. They've got all the right experts, it seems like, on their team as far as appraisers and underwriters and accountants and lawyers and everybody looking at all the right things. So it seems to be pretty buttoned up. Like Jim, I'm in as well. I spoke with the one of the partners today. I thought it was going to be 30-40 minute call. It ended up going an hour and a half. And it couldn't have gone better as far as the questions that I asked. Not only did he have answers to almost all of them, and I sent Jim a note afterwards because I knew that Jim was going to be involved in the deal as well. But there was one question that he couldn't completely answer for me, and he followed up within 15-20 minutes with a well thought out answer, and I thought that was pretty cool.
The only thing I didn't like about this deal was the way I found this guy. Is he just sent me a message on Bigger Pockets and said, I see you're a passive investor. You want to talk? And so I blew him off a few times, and he kept saying, hey, you want to talk? And then I'm like, sure, I'll talk. Why not? And I finally agreed to it. And then I found out I liked, so it was kind of weird, but I've done business with people I met at Bigger Pockets. I did business with a guy I met at Coin, Mike, right there. We did business and we met, just networking. So I'm not going to have a hang up on meeting someone on Bigger Pockets. And so I just kind of ignored that part because that was a little creepy to me. But now that I've talked to him a couple times, I like it, and I'm gonna go for it.
Hey guys, I got to get going. Got to go do a bedtime.
All right. Good night, Zach.
Yep. Have a good one, everybody. I'll talk to you next time. See ya.
All right. Are there any questions for Sean before we move? We'll go quick to the next one and then be done around hopefully by 9:30. Any questions or comments? No? All right. Thank you, Sean. Appreciate that.
Sure. Hey, I would just say, just like the oil and gas, if anybody does have questions, I took copious notes. I can, relay whatever questions may come to you later. So feel free to reach out to me.
Yeah, I think
Perfect.
that webinar is still out there somewhere. So there might be a link to that somewhere. Do you still have that, Sean, maybe?
Yeah, I still have it. I know that it was yesterday. There were two, I think it was yesterday, the day before, it was at 3 o'clock or 6 o'clock or something like that. I don't know if it's still live or not, but I can certainly send it around.
Yeah.
All right. So Nighthawk Equity is another syndicator, and I had a call with them about 10 days ago, and Mike said he had one this week. So I just wanted to maybe do a couple of these every time that we get together. If someone's talked to a syndicator, just kind of get your 5-minute or less take on it. What you thought? And so Mike, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, sure. So as you guys are getting on these lists with syndicators, the part of get to know you phase is they set up a call with you. And so I actually didn't speak with Michael Blanc himself. He's got a guy, Bronson Hill, that handles his investor relations. And so Bronson, he refers to himself as a general partner. So I'm assuming, it sounds like he also is part of the deals. They as a firm, they do put in between 2% and 5% of the raise. So they do have some skin in the game. It seems, they're maybe a little bit smaller syndicator out there. They've got about 1,700 units over 13 properties. So I know there's some larger ones. This is the first really introductory conversation I've had with syndicators that are from a investor's point of view. Whenever I was helping with some investment real estate, I spoke with a lot of syndicators. To Steve's point, there's various levels of experience of these syndicators. It seems like everybody and their brother that went to a conference believes they can be a syndicator, but most of the time those deals fall through as they maybe don't have the network for capital or what. So I know as a broker, we were very suspicious of the syndicator that came to us and said, yeah, we've got a property that or a sponsor that has lots of experience, but these guys were considered sub sponsors that didn't necessarily have the pull and the experience to get the deal closed. So definitely, what impressed me about these guys is they've always closed on their deals. That was a question I asked. They do go through third-party management, so they are working to set up their own management. But they do have an asset manager that has over 20-some years of experience that does oversee all the third-party management. They're typically working in smaller markets too, more of a cash flow type play. At 3 markets, Tennessee, Alabama, and Arkansas, and I don't have the cities written down. I do have a summary email that Bronson sent over to me that has some past deals that they closed last year that I'll forward out to everybody. It has some links to some of the deal memos and a couple other resources on there, which is pretty nice. Typically, they're going for a refinance. About 50% of their properties they're refinancing. They're able to refinance and get investors' money back in year 2. So that was a interesting point that, as most of these memos are coming out, they're, some of the pro forma that I've seen, they'll show your money coming back to you in year 2 or year 3. And they're saying they're able to do that about 50% of the time in the deals they've done. Averaging between 7 and 10% cash on cash return. And then their splits are 80-20 or 70-30, depending on the deal. And then they too have that kind of, once you reach a certain IRR, then it flips to 50-50. So seems, kind of speaking the same language. Most of these guys sounds like they kind of have the same flavor of terms for their deals. I did ask about how they're kind of handling their underwriting during COVID and what they're doing with, disbursements right now. And they're withholding any type of payments right now, just to make sure they can preserve some cash. So as soon as some things clear up, they said last month's collections were very solid, and actually year over year, they were better than the previous year from a rent collection standpoint, but they're still being very conservative. They sound like they're a fairly conservative group overall. They do underwrite with a disposition cap rate that's about a half a point to a full point, 5 to 7 years out, which, up until recently, cap rates were really compressing. So we'll see what happens here in the short term. But overall, I think they're, pretty solid group. I like Bronson. Sounds like, they've got a good team around them. But, again, it's N of 1 for me. So I don't have a whole lot of experience from an investor's point of view whenever I'm betting these sponsors. So.
Well, that's great. I was looking at my notes that I took when I talked to Bronson as well. Okay. And you hit every one of the points that I hit with them. They said they're conservative. They're transparent when they communicate, and they want to partner long-term with investors. So they want to get you, more than one deal. The only other thing is they do about 3 to 5 deals a year is kind of their goal. And all those numbers are going to change with what's going on now. I don't know that people are going to do 3 to 5 if they were before, but everything else was right on. And some of the markets they're in, they have 5 of those properties are in Memphis, which is a market I'm in for single family, so I like that. And Little Rock was one of the other ones. But that was exactly what I got out of them. The only thing that I didn't like about these guys is the minimums are 75. And, you know, I'm kind of trying to find the 25s and 50s. It's just a little bit more comfortable because my goal is this year, my goal is to diversify among different operators in different markets. So I liked them because they're in markets that I'm not in, with the multifamily, and but the minimums are just a little bit high for me. So any questions on that for Mike? No? All right, I think, you know, for those of you that are looking to passively invest, I would recommend that maybe before our next meeting, you try to just get on a call with somebody and just see what they say. I think it really, the more times you can do that, and that's what I've been doing this year. You just learn a lot just from talking to them. Steve and I talked about, we have not yet executed upon, but you know, we've been sharing spreadsheets back and forth and talked about putting together a spreadsheet that had like the 10 key items that you really want to figure out. You know, some of the stuff is just like the minimum, the region they're in, and some other stuff. So at some point, I have a spreadsheet that I took some information from Steve and some of my own information, and I'd like to share maybe on a Google Doc or something that everyone can see, to just kind of vet operators together, and we can have a comment section and stuff just to share information. So I would encourage you to look up some companies and make a few calls, and then maybe someone else can do some of the chatting next time. For the agenda, for next time, I'll send it out to see if we have other ideas, but maybe how to analyze the passive investment. That might be a big one to take on, but you know, I'd like to see if we can get someone who wants to tackle that one a little bit. And I'd like to go back to the bank on yourself topic a little bit, and then maybe have a couple people talk about syndicators that they've talked to. And then maybe either next time or the one after that, we'll get maybe Matt Pinchin, I don't know how to say his last name, but one of the syndicators that Steve and I know, maybe we'll get him to come kind of be a guest and chat with us. But I'm ready to close out. If there's any questions, comments, anything.
Jim, I was thinking that, you know, all these good emails that are coming out with a bunch of information, maybe we could set up like a Google share site or something that, you know, you have a couple different sections with, I don't know, like analyzing a section or sponsor section, things like that we could all have access to. That's
a great idea. You mean like a shared drive where we can post documents?
Yeah, like a Google Doc or whatever everyone wants to use. It doesn't matter to me.
Okay.
No, I was scrolling through some of the old emails and just trying to find stuff. And I love Google, but it's shit when you're trying to find old emails and files. So well, I think it's a great idea.
Mike, are you experienced, capable of setting something up like that?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to set it up, that'd be fantastic. And then maybe we could just start posting things to that as you get them. You know, it'd still be nice to have an email come around saying, hey, I'm posting this thing. But if we keep them all there and have a shared drive or something where we can come up and just go find stuff, and also links like to the thing Sean's going to send around to webinars. If there's a place for links, a place for documents, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, if you want to tackle that, that'd be awesome. Maybe we can talk about that before the next time we get together. You guys think 2 weeks from today would be a good day to do it again? Is this a good day or time?
Works for me.
Let's see. That's the that'd be the 14th.
That might be an issue for me.
All right. Well, we can maybe that week. Are you guys good with every 2 weeks until we're done with the quarantine?
Yes.
All right. So I'll figure out. I'll send out some ideas for dates because it's hard to do that now. But I'll send out 2 weeks out, and I'll also send out a recommended agenda. And then if you have any comments or want to add things to the agenda, just send me an email. You know, like I say at Coin all the time, is I've never run a group like this, so I don't know what I'm doing. So if you think these are going too long, too short, not enough information, I'm talking too much, just let me know. I want to make this group work for everyone. It's been great for me so far.
You're talking too much.
I know. I know.
Not enough beer.
I'm into the whiskey now. But hopefully we'll be able to meet and bump elbows soon. So
Yeah.
thank you all, and we'll be in touch, and we'll shoot for a couple of weeks, one day that week.
Hey, Jim, before we go, just a shout out to you and a thanks for the Essential Ohio GoFundMe. Great idea.
Oh.
Good job.
Yeah.
No worries.
Thanks for doing that.
No worries. I appreciate it, guys.
Nice work.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take care.
Jim.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Jim.
Jim.
See you
See you
guys.
guys.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.